I now wonder about Sir David Attenborough. I, as an individual, have got the greatest respect for Sir David Attenborough, and he's certainly been one of the greatest influences on my life. He's one of the first people I ever remember on television where he took us to the most fascinating places in the world, and he went there where no other people had actually been before. And he's taught us so much about this planet. But the odd fact about it is, he hasn't learned much about it himself. In that way, yes, he can do all the technical stuff and make all those names, like many people can, Latin names and what have you, when he's doing his shows. But recently, he's sort of contradicted everything he's ever said, especially about evolution. He's done shows on evolution recently, and he has made this statement that Britain ought to do something about climate change because it began the Industrial Revolution. It's caused all this burning of coal. As if the people who were doing that knew and understood the future of what they were doing. It's like asking the Greenies on the left, do they understand the future of creating poverty in the Western countries, trying to stop a climate change, which David Attenborough, of all the people in the world, ought to be well aware can't be done because of the thing called Civic cycles right now, which I suggest Mr. Attenborough or Sir David Attenborough becomes familiar with, and so should everyone else, which tells you why possibly this ice age cycles come and go. But the thing is, it's what he made the statement that we have to do something about climate change. What you can do about it, there's only one thing anyone or anything has ever done about climate change: you either become extinct or you adapt through it. Now, the idea of humans to use your intelligence and adapt through climate changes, and that's what's caused the improvement in human life over the millennia that they've been evolving their cultures, from the first city-states, if you like, in Babylon. Now, or maybe prior to that, but there's evidence that humans existed in civilized states well before and during the last ice age, but that's still the story. The thing is, it's very odd, isn't it, that all these really rich people who want something to do about climate change actually have got the money. If they want to, they're saying to people in Africa and India, oh, no, you forego all the things. We are rich, we are super, super rich, living super luxury and ease, and yet they're saying, no, you should not desire to have these and comforts, the welfare, the hospital systems, the education, all the lovely things that we have. You should forego those because we fear that if you do come and get as rich as us, you'll change the climate, which is ridiculous. Because the only impact they shall have by adapting the other processes, living standards of others, is cause an environmental adaptation process, which is perfectly natural. They're perfectly symbiotic with, in the fact of it all evolves. Climate change and climate is an evolutionary subject. That's the only, and it's an economic subject. If you know the climate change and the cause, what you can do about it then becomes an academic matter and a matter of philosophy, if it's a philosophical thing, and a matter of need and human wants and desires, not a dictatorship by an elite that's suddenly saying, oh, all you people should not have what we want or what we have. The thing is, how you go about what they're suggesting to people in Africa is that they don't have there's 1 billion people on the world with hardly any water and no electricity. And they say again, well, you can't have all of those things because if you have those things, it uses energy. And you need to use energy. To make energy, you have to use energy. Where does the energy come from to make things? It comes from fossil fuels. There is no way of making wind and solar power and panels and the batteries and all that without consuming an awful lot of fossil fuels. And the point of this is the lack of calculation in all these elite It's very simple. If there's far less CO2 created in putting Eela power stations in strategic places in Africa and producing water with them, so they've got an abundance of food and cheap electricity, which then create their sort of economies, then trying to cover the place in wind and solar, which are not very efficient anyway and intermittent, and how many batteries would you need to keep Africa powered along when the wind didn't shine or at night time? The whole thing is just talk. No one's actually saying anything remotely scientific. Or it even makes basic common sense, because the amount of wind power and solar panels you would need to keep it going in Africa alone would cause so much coal to be burnt in China, where they make these things, and so much oil and fuel to be used in transporting them and installing them and paying for them. You would double the amount of CO2 into the atmosphere than if you just built coal-fired power stations anyway. And the other alternative is to have nuclear power stations everywhere, which they haven't got. But the other alternative is to investigate permanent magnetic motors and things like this, and have a look at economics itself, so that people can gain wealth and a better life, and look at the efficiencies of these countries first, so that people can improve their life and improve the environmental impact they have on it, which mostly is degradation of the forests and lands through the need for the desperation they live in to provide enough food and expand their incomes like everyone else is entitled to. It's no good saying that, oh, we the rich, well, we're going to tell you all, you poor people, to stay poor, because now, well, we don't want you to get rich like us. 1 minute, they're all talking about stuff, getting people out of poverty in Africa. Next minute, they want to create poverty in all over the world for something they can do nothing about, which is climate, other than adapt to it. So I'm saying that Sir David Attenborough this time ought to retract his statements, because he's a powerful voice in the world, and right at this moment it makes no actual sense whatsoever, and which is a shame. You can't do anything about human desire to improve their life, and all humans have an equal right to attain or attempt to attain what David Attenborough or anyone else has got. And to deny that, then we get into the realm of Hitler or Stalin or some other despot trying to organise things as they see their ideology should fit into. So I'm suggesting that before anyone cries on about wind and solar panels for Africa and India, they ought to do a little bit of maths and a little bit of counting and add up and say, does the biosequestration, that is, can we plant enough plants and what have you, to take care of the coal-fired power stations or the Gila ones we're going to build, can we offset that by planting more forests and trees and crops to take it in? Because that's the answer. That is the answer to the problem. Offset your coal-fired power stations by creating water and planting wherever it takes in the CO2. It's very, very simple, common sense and natural and scientific. To try to cover the place in wind and solar and batteries would cost so much CO2 emitted from China. If this human created climate change is actually correct, it would double the temperatures very, very quickly. By the time they had these wind and solar panels installed, you certainly would have a greenhouse effect caused by climate change fanatics. It is that simple. It is that lacking in common sense. People have gone off the tree because of climate change.